reality, companies, like large companies, are investing more and more money in digitalization. So what could be said about the SME sector with less resources, financial and not only? So what's going on in this regard? So maybe we could start with a World Bank perspective, just regional approach, and something about the Caucasus region as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Can you hear me well? Do you hear me well?
Yes, yes. Please proceed.
Great. So thanks very much for the introduction. As my colleague said, I am based in the World Bank, and as our mandate is to support developing countries, most of my comments and perspectives take that approach and take that angle. I think the first point that I would like to make is that we do have a tendency to throw this word digitalization around. I think that it's great that this crisis has put the focus on a very, very important issue. I think there is a risk that we casually use this phrase without really ever going down to the nitty-gritty of what that means and what that implies for business owners, for people on the ground with limited resources who need to adapt to this crisis and to adapt to this evolving world that we live in. At the very, very heart of it, at the very simplest, digitalization, as we call it, can simply be taking bookings and orders over the internet. Not everybody can provide services online. If you think of hairdressers, if you think of bakers, people who make food, lunch food to order, taking orders online, especially in the case of my clients, it's not necessarily simple. We don't always work in countries that have the digital payment systems that, of course, have the infrastructure, that have the internet bandwidth to allow that. So that has actually been some of the challenges that we have faced right at the very, very beginning, before we start to get to technology adoption, before we start to get to soft logistics. So I wanted to make that point. Of course, a lot of the emphasis at this point now has been about moving services online, even in cases where it was rare to provide online services in the past, for instance, with health services, tutoring, legal services, and even where it was previously unthinkable. I'm thinking of fitness classes, for instance. But even taking it to just working from home, as many of us are, including myself, again, having the ICT infrastructure to do that has not been as obvious or as simple as we think. Even in the Caucasus, I can tell you that there are many countries, to remain unnamed, and regions where we had information to tell us that there was 100% coverage. But what does coverage mean? What we found is that where there was 100% coverage, that was good enough for Facebook, but it wasn't really good enough to work, and to actually work for 8 hours a day whilst your children are doing their schoolwork for 8 hours a day, whilst your partner is also working for 8 hours a day. In other places, there was the 100% coverage. The speeds were good enough, but the hardware has gone overlooked. Hardware isn't something that we in the World Bank typically focus on. We do have programs that allow our beneficiaries to use vouchers to purchase hardware, but I wouldn't say that providing computers or providing computing power for schools or for individuals has been something that we've focused on specifically a lot in our projects. And what we found was, as I say, where we had done previous work to make sure that there was the ICT infrastructure that was necessary, individual homes, individual businesses didn't have the devices up to date or the computing equipment up to date to allow them to do what they needed to do. In a broader sense, in the most common parlance, when we talk about digitalization, it's really a lot of it about technology adoption. I think that again has been fine when we've talked about large firms. If you think of large agriculture firms across the world using precision agriculture services, using precision agriculture equipment, using data platforms to provide up to the minute, up to the second information on weather patterns, on soil, on market prices. But again, when it comes to the individual or when it comes to the firms, we're a little bit stuck. Each small firm is extremely distinct in its individual needs. For a company like ours, we don't necessarily have the structure to be able to do one-to-one consulting in order to provide tailored, specific solutions. Again, we can provide vouchers, we can provide education, we can provide training, but that only really gets you so far. And what we find is that we're only able to support our clients and our beneficiaries up to a certain point, and we never really get to that point where, in the case of technology adoption specifically, where we really see that difference being made on the ground. And that's something that we're working with now. We're looking at the way that we do business, we're looking at the way that we do work, we're looking at the way that we're responding to this crisis. There are some shoots of hope, I think, in realizing that there is this issue at the SME level. We've had more discussion, we've had more open conversation, and we're starting to find strategies and ways to deal with the issue. And just one more note, if I might, about the fact that downstream soft logistics has become important. We now see e-commerce being a core part of our clients' economy. Home delivery and curbside pickup, as we call it here in the US, relies heavily on soft logistics. It relies on you being able to have a network of deliverers. That could be vans, individuals walking on bikes, in cabs, who you can connect with quickly, immediately. But what do you need to be able to do that? It's not simply infrastructure and internet speeds, it's also mapping services that are up to date. It's traffic information that is up to date. If I book something, I need to know that it will take 30 minutes, if it will take 5 minutes, if it will take 2 hours. That influences my buying decisions. If I don't have accurate information the first time, I'm less likely to use that service a second time. So things like address information systems, which is not necessarily an issue in Tbilisi, but you can see, I think, that in lagging regions, certainly in our other client countries outside of the Caucasus, there are not very clear, obvious, and standardized address systems. But this has really created an issue. So I just wanted to touch on this point as well, make a point that that's something that we're also working on in the World Bank with our clients. It's a challenge for all of us. It's a new field for all of us, but we're excited to be working in this field. I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Indeed, this new reality puts us in a situation that decisions have to be done very quickly, but at the same time, there are a lot of opportunities and different companies could work in different directions. But still, an issue of opportunities and resources available, especially for the SME sector, it's really crucial. May I ask you, John, what is your experience since being working in Georgia? What is the, I don't know, level of digitalization within Georgia from the SME sector or in general?
Thank you very much. If you directly ask my experience, so I'm Belgian original and working for 16 years already in Georgia. My experience directly, I would say that as representing a company, a big company like a Gosselin, we have an IT infrastructure, okay, but if you see this SME, and especially in Georgia, the smaller SMEs, there is a fundamental problem there. And maybe I firstly introduce a little bit what we are doing to get the point. The European Business Association, we are representing more than 100 Georgian businesses, and actually 90% of them are SMEs. So what we are doing, we're facilitating the trade between Georgia and Europe, and we're advocating for European businesses in Georgia. Our work is actually policy-based. So we do research studies, we make position papers, and we actually just did a position paper on digitalization in Georgia. Actually, it was quite active because due to the pandemic, everybody went from the normal business to the online business, and we faced some problems there. The smaller businesses, the first biggest issue actually, I would say, was the laws. Georgia was not that far yet in laws on e-commerce. There was a lack of executive mechanisms. So Georgia had a problem there. And Georgia was working on it, but unfortunately this summer suddenly the pandemic, everybody got used and it went downhill again. People started again just normal working. In my view, and especially in Georgia, you really see a difference between the big business, the large businesses, and the SME sector. A large business, it has the financials, it has, like World Bank was telling also, it can make infrastructures, it can make, for them, focused databases. An SME doesn't have that. An SME has to rely on available products on the market already, which they can share, which people develop. But when people develop, they need a mass customer base, because an SME doesn't have a lot of money to pay, so they need a lot of customers to develop. And there we have a problem in Georgia, two problems actually. First one is that the lack of scale, the scale of the market. Georgia is not a big market. So most developers would not go to Georgia, would prefer to be in Europe. The second, connected to that, Georgian language. It is not so simple to just make everything into Georgian language. So you have the existing programs who are always in English version, but then you have the problem in Georgia that people are telling, okay, you need to have it in Georgian for reporting issues. So that brings up the price for SMEs, which is very difficult to pay for. A last and also important fact I would mention that is actually an issue is the skills, the labor market. When you have these IT programs, if you have the digitalization of all these databases, you need to have qualified people working with it. You need to train staff. And this is actually when we did analysis of all our businesses, all our companies who are our members, that was the #1 priority problem, that we have a lack on skills, a lack of training programs, and also especially for digitalization, for these kind of things. That was a big issue. Thank you.
Very much. Well, exactly, the lack of human resources could be one of the main challenges we have here, and not only here, because not only willingness and existence of resources could help in this regard, because you also need some people that will do this quickly and efficiently. Irakli, may I ask you, so since you are representing the company which is providing consultancy to other players on the market on digitalization and these kind of solutions, what is the demand? How many companies address you with these kind of requests?
Thank you for the question. First of all, let me share you with some information regarding the research which we already did 2 months ago in a program which was established by USAID. This program is related also on SMEs and the level of the digitalization of SMEs. So we find out that more than 60%, at least 70% is not digitalized. They are not using very simple IT tools and infrastructure, and they did not have ability during this COVID reality to switch into online mode from the offline mode. I mean, the whole company to control the staff and the employees and all the processes what they had in the companies. So this was the main challenge for this program, and the idea to help the companies establish the IT infrastructure on the minimum basis to somehow handle this reality. My company is working more than 8 years, and during this period we have more than 200 companies of different sizes in our customer list, and of course the most don't understand the value of this digitalization, how they can use this digitalization in terms of their business, to grow their business and to make this business established. And also the second part of this story is the willing of the payment. You mentioned this question. Are they, do they have the willing of investment in this digitalization? Willing exists, but they don't have enough economical resources to do that. So SMEs today are working generally in process that they have only must-to-have things, only must-to-have. So they are looking at e-commerce or other IT stuff like nice-to-have, and they are not investing in this too much. Only on the daily basis, I mean the computers and this minimal IT infrastructure, what they need for operations, but not the products what will give them the level of the digitalization and ability to drive their company in online. So this is the main challenges from our point of view that we can say during this years, based on our experience that we have during these 8 years.
But still, can you tell us whether the number of requests to your company increased since COVID, or it's not like that?
Yes, but it's mostly the big companies, mostly because even during this program that I mentioned, USAID program, we make the research of 30 companies, SME companies, and during 2 months, 2 of them closed. Okay. So this is very crucial, and this is very hard time for them to survive. So, of course, they are looking for a market and looking for cheapest solutions what they can get on a market of e-commerce or other IT services or infrastructure. But I have to say that not always the cheapest option are giving the best option, and of course they are buying something and then they have some disappointment about the digitalization, because first is to buy, second is to use it, and they don't know how to use it. They think that if they will buy e-commerce, they are establishing and they are going to the new future, but if you don't know how to use these tools, then it's useless.
Thank you. Ihar, may I switch to you with the same question as Irakli mentioned? There are several challenges in Georgia, starting from the low level of digitalization and lack of resources, etc., etc. What is your experience? What is the level of digitalization within SME sector, like in the region, in a broader scope? And at the same time, would like to continue with another question. Okay, we are talking about the willingness, we are talking about resources, but even if there is a willingness and there is no enough skillful staff exactly right now, are there any ready-made solutions for these SMEs to transform and to start being digitalized? Thank you.
So it's interesting. I'll have to start with a disclaimer. I have been working for digital engagement practice for the last 5 years.
Okay.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. Please continue.
Yeah, I was saying that I have been working for this industry for the last 5 years in digital transformation, and it seems to me that all companies around have already undergone this transformation. So the question is not whether to do it, but how to do it faster again and again. But I remember that back in 2016, there was a research saying that around 70% of all small and medium businesses had some digital strategy underway. And back then, it was literally about innovative application of technology. Right now, there are literally courses at the universities and business schools, digital transformation. It has grown into a real body of knowledge. Imagine it like a bookshelf where you have different volumes on, let's say, enterprise architecture, cloud analytics, agile transformation. But I would agree, and yet according to another report, this time by Deloitte, 80% of small businesses are not taking full advantage of digital capabilities. And there are two main reasons. First, they are not simply aware of the benefits. And second, they do not believe that technology is relevant to their particular business cases. And unfortunately, the gap between ambition and execution is also widening. So what I can tell you from my experience, the mission of my company, EPAM, is to help business navigate waves of technology. And we see that successful projects have several patterns in common. First, business owners should be able to answer why are they doing this transformation and what do they want to transform into. Leadership is not just about technology. A good sign is when you can formulate your strategy in under 2 minutes. It's very useful because this transformation is a cultural shift and should be adopted by all employees. And of course, it's very useful to avoid using corporate language or just fancy statements that you want to become person in the world, or on the other hand, say something very obscure like we are pursuing an easier cohesive solution that would proliferate customer value by the means of democratizing technological landscape, blah, blah. So your people might just say and continue doing things they used to. And maybe the final point, you should treat digital transformation not just as costs, but as an investment. And when you are doing investment, it's always about setting the right set of KPIs and being selective. Prioritization is the key. So when you have this framework set up, the next step is all about digital capabilities. In our company, we see business as digitally enabled if there are two things. First, significant business relationships with customers, suppliers, and employees are digitally mediated and enabled, and you have to set up some solutions for that. And the second part is that core business processes are accomplished by a digital network, enabling transparency. And this is maybe where I want to draw attention to the open source. Open source undoubtedly speeds the digital transformation for most companies. I see this happening in several ways. The factor that most people think of is, of course, the money. The less company spends on software, the more it can dedicate to other facets of digital transformation efforts. So maybe to sum everything up, I will go back to my opening statement, and the values that made your business so successful last year, last decade, or even maybe last century might not help you win today anymore. And you have to organize for innovation and be ready to transform again and again.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, it's a kind of a mental switch because, yeah, exactly, you have to make this decision. You have to understand that that is something you really need. It's not only about cost, but investment, which really works. So, yeah, there are lots of stuff to be done in advance. May I ask also other panelists about any concrete mechanisms you are offering, let's say, if we are talking about the World Bank or association, which provides this kind of a mechanism to support this SME digitalization? Is there are very concrete programs or mechanisms for that?
From the point of the World Bank specifically, we have several measures or instruments that we use to support beneficiaries, firms and individuals. Right now we have a project called the Genie Project. If you're not familiar with it, it's the Georgia National Innovation Ecosystem Project. It was designed to support the Georgian government in supporting firms and individuals. It's run through the Georgia Innovation and Technology Agency, GITA. We essentially, we offer innovation infrastructure where we are refurbishing a number of community innovation centers and also regional innovation hubs. We have four community centers and 3 hubs all over Georgia. We have innovation services. We're providing an accelerator right now where we have 15 firms already in the program. We hope to have another 2 cohorts over the next 18 months or so. We also have a project which we intend to train up to 3,000 Georgian individuals in professional training certification with international training certification. We're doing a pilot. We're about to launch a pilot. There will be 500 participants in that, and then we hope to enlarge from there. We've had to adapt both those programs, both the accelerator and the training program, significantly, as you can imagine, as a result of the crisis. It was originally supposed to be face-to-face training, and the accelerator also had a lot of face-to-face components, and at least for these pilot phases and for the first cohort, they'll be done entirely online. And finally, we have a lot of financing programs. There is a small matching grants program, which provides 100,000 lari to small businesses, in fact, to startups would be more accurate. There you see a lot of firms that, for instance, are designing apps that are relatively small in number of people involved, but are starting and have promise. We have a much larger grants program, which is 650,000 lari. I'll say that both these grants programs are matching grants programs. I think that's important because we basically use the fact that these firms are able to get private financing as some, should I say, evidence that there is a market, that there is private sector investment, that there is interest. And finally, we have a research grant program, which is $3 million in total. We'll be supporting, I think, 47 companies, research teams from universities. And there, of course, it's very, very early stage, very, very early stage indeed. But that's part of it. Innovation, I think, and digitalization, as we're calling it, go hand in hand. And although not all of the research grants you would say necessarily fit into whatever definition of digitalization you have, I think that it's important to mention. So that's just one project that we have. We also have other trust-funded activities through the EU. We have technical assistance that we're trying to provide to the government directly. So we have number of projects and programs.
Okay, thank you. May I ask you also, representing myself, organization, foundation, which is supporting civil society development, civil society organizations, and Europe Foundation has also one program which envisages supporting social enterprises or social businesses. Do you have any experience of promoting this digitalization, IT, technologies, etc., within social businesses, and what are the results for that? I mean, World Bank or any other, has any experience with this kind of organizations?
We do a lot of, excuse me, sorry.
Yeah,
Go
please,
ahead.
thank you.
We do sector-specific work across the world in a variety of sectors. I wouldn't say that social sector has been a specific sector that we've typically used. We usually focus on very traditional tradable sectors, frankly, agribusiness, transport, logistics, IT. But and as you know, we do work on digitalization. I wouldn't say that we do that pairing, but sector-specific work, especially in the area of value chain development, is definitely something that we look at. We recently, just a year ago, for instance, looked at digital trends in the tourism sector in Georgia, where we found a lot of interesting trends and a lot of interesting interventions the government could take to recognize that tourism has moved on from, for instance, central tourism administration-led campaigns, and is much more reliant now on social media like Instagram, Facebook, and such like. And so therefore, the way that businesses need to work, the way that businesses need to engage with their clients, with their potential clients, with clients after they have left their service provision, also needs to change. So my answer is yes, we do work in specific areas. Yes, we do work in digitalization. I personally haven't seen or worked in a project where it's specifically IT in social entities, but it's not a crazy idea at all. It's not something that sounds completely alien to me.
Okay, thank you. Ihar, may I ask you about the EPAM experience in this direction? Have you got any experience of dealing with social businesses? Because, I mean, if we are talking about SMEs and social businesses, they could be treated somehow in the same pool. So do you have any experience with social businesses, digitalization, etc.? What? Ihar, can you hear us? Okay, I guess we have some problems. John, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, then let me switch to you with a different question. You've mentioned in your introductory speech, let me call it like that one of the issues we face here in Georgia is a lack of a legal framework. And in this regard, there are some laws coming and there are some draft laws coming which are in line with the EU approximation process, etc., etc. But still, what are the main steps and the important steps to be taken really quickly from the government side to somehow, as a regulator, to push these things forward?
Yeah, I think the new legislation on the e-commerce, the law, it is based on the EU standards, and for us it is very important. The EU standard legislation works also in Georgia. As I mentioned at the beginning, trade in Georgia should be the same like trade in Europe. So on the legal framework, the problem is that the law should be there and implemented very fast. E-commerce is a very nice future, but you have to make sure that you have the framework there, because later you will have problems if there is no law. So this has to be implemented very fast, and I hope that it's the legislation which is now in the parliament. We were also working on that. We gave our input to that it is as much as possible according to the EU standards. If I could go back to the question you had before from World Bank for the social media, I would like to answer on that one also. Okay, as a business association, unfortunately, I would like to do the same. Like World Bank mentioned, all the millions we can invest, but as a business association, we are not that rich, and we cannot invest all the money in all these kind of projects. But our task as a business association, and which we are doing very good at, is actually the social media. We bring together businesses. We had in the last month, I give you examples, RD Group, Tegeta Motors. We did on Facebook, we did advertising for them to show them that they had their digitalization in place, and they have, and this is the advantage. They show their advantages. I think that's an important thing we also need to do. As I also heard from Irakli, that not all people are aware it in Georgia, it costs a lot of money. We need to show more the proof from this works. How come they have better business at the end? Because the digitalization is in place. That's very important. A point also Ihar was mentioning about the schools. Specific now for Georgia again. I see a problem in Georgia in the school training is that this is not yet developed well enough by the people at the schools, that there is that the teachers are not yet the teachers we need to have who can explain the technology, the new technology. So it takes time, this one. A faster solution for the moment, and there I see a big opportunity for JITA, is that we need upgrade on staff training, small training modules for already people who are working to upgrade their digitalization process in the companies itself. This, I think, is a very important thing that we as Georgia should be working on that very fast.
Okay, thank you. That's really crucial. You touched the issue of education from the different perspective. Education in this direction is very important, and teachers in schools should be ready to provide very, very background knowledge for pupils, that they are ready in their future life and adjust it very easily and quickly. Irakli, may I ask you about your business? Do you think there are very concrete steps to be taken by the government so your business is more developed and more flourishing?
Yes, of course. Of course, there is some steps which the whole sector is waiting for. We are looking at Ukraine and Belarus, and we already know that they established and they are succeed with this direction, and we have to learn something from them also. There is legal issues. There is one big issue which we face. It is in-house development of government sector, and this is most crucial because all the budgets are spending directly in these governmental organizations, and this money doesn't come to the business, so we don't have an ability to grow enough and to grow fast and make our products to sell on different countries. And also I can mention that the strategy about the education is one of the most important, because as other speakers already mentioned, and me myself, the main challenge on this market is the education. The sector of IT is quite new in Georgia, and many of the business owners and also the staff and employees in this company, they don't know they don't have skills to use these digital things, and also the business doesn't understand and believe that digitalization will help them and grow their business. So I will once more tell about the project that we start with USAID, because this is the main idea of this project. We will provide during 3 months the user guides and some educational stuff, and for all the business. It will be free, and we hope that it will somehow support and help the SMEs to implement minimal IT things in their business, their own. But this is not the, how to say it, this is not the end point. This is just starting point, and the impact of this project will not be huge. It will be small. Because of the lack of knowledge, we have experience implementing of projects in SMEs, and this implementation is going face to face. So it means that we are spending huge resources to implement digital things in these companies. To learn, we are implementing things, we are selling IT stuff, and also we are making trainings for them how to use it. So that is why most of the companies doesn't have enough financial resources to pay all these things, and maybe from the government side, maybe from the foundation or USAID or other organization, there will be some projects that will help SMEs to get this consultancy and trainings from local IT companies, and they will support them with some foundation. It will be, I think, from my point of view, it will be really helpful, because if 100 SME company will succeed with this foundation, and they will succeed with the business, then other companies will know about it, and then they might think about investing.
Okay, great. Thank you, Irakli. Thank you. Being founder of the ICT cluster, you are the direct person who have, I don't know, direct communication and relations with companies doing in this sector, and you are also in a position, is the best position to push this digitalization and related topics to other companies as well. Since we are almost out of time, I would like to somehow just to wrap up the main messages we've heard during this session. So education was mentioned several times, and I should say that education is a cross-cutting topic for all the sessions, because it does not matter what the session was about, education was there. So exactly, education is something we really need, especially in the IT sector. So human resources to be developed in this direction. While we are speaking about the SME sector as such, it is important that there is an understanding within the sector that there is a need to start thinking and moving towards digitalization. So they have to understand that it's not about only costs, but it is about investments. At the same time, there are lots of resources and open data and open sources, etc., that allow companies who really will to move in this direction start self-education in a way, and start using these resources to step by step start working on digitalization. And of course, when we are talking about the digitalization, there are different aspects, there are different scale, and there are different directions in this regard. It's really great that we have a World Bank supporting sector in Georgia. We have also other donors with Irakli's project mentioned. We have JITA working in this direction, and there are a lot of opportunities, like training opportunities and also financial resources for startups, really willing to develop IT direction. So it's really great, and I do hope that COVID and pandemic would even push this direction forward, and there will be very urgent steps from the government side towards this legal framework improvement. We've mentioned here like e-commerce and other topics to be addressed really quickly. On this, I would like to thank you, the audience, like online and offline audience. It's my great pleasure, and I appreciate your contribution, Irakli and all online panelists. Thank you very much, and I do hope that we'll have lots of other opportunities to talk about the developed sector in the future in this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you.